This is a really special one because today we have as our guest Justin Fisher of Decade80, the band. How are you?
I am doing so well, and I am so excited to be the first guest on the Gen X Vibes podcast. We're gonna have a lot of fun today.
We are. I was so excited when we connected, and we've met a few times since, and so we're here and we're doing it, and I think we have a lot of overlap and a lot to talk about.
Definitely.
Yeah. So will you tell everybody just like a little bit about yourself and Decade80?
Yeah. Decade80 is Delmarva's premier 80s band, and we like to say that we own the 80s.
That is,
oh, thank you. She's defending it. And we are very much a top 40s, 80s cover band. So we don't pigeonhole ourselves in any specific subgenre like hair metal or new wave. I like to say we're sort of the 80s for everyone.
Yeah, you are.
And we play primarily down in the Dewey Beach area at this point in time, but we're starting to branch out quite a bit as demand grows regionally, like Chesapeake City, Westchester, Ocean City, Maryland, some DC stuff coming up. And it's been really excited to see all the growth of this project, which I had virtually no grand vision or intentions for besides to have fun and express my lifelong musicality. It's amazing to see the proliferation of the fan base and just the success that I don't think we really set out for initially, and now we're locked in. It's so exciting.
Yeah, you are. It's a movement, and we'll definitely dig into that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess my first question would be, tell us a little bit about your musicality. Like, is it always 80s? Was it 80s based, or did you choose that? Because I would say there's kind of a hole in cover band choices for the 80s, for 80s type music. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, you hit the nail on the head with that one. It has not always, yes and no, it has always been 80s for me. I have been playing music semi-professionally into professionally since age 10 or 11. Sporadically, and I took a break between ages 15 through 20. Really?
Did you? Okay.
I did. I lost sight of the whole musical thing due to a focus on academics and getting extremely serious about the whole thing. But that being said, I think I was always raised on 80s a fair bit because my parents are actually very young boomers, so just
they're
tail end.
They're
honorary
just like
Xers.
You guys, they're honorary Xers for sure.
Thank you so much. But probably them a little bit more than us, honestly. And so, them graduating high school, going through, college, and just being young adults throughout the 80s, they have a lot of very fond memories of the music and the culture which defined that time. And so thus, I think the 80s was always on to some extent when I was growing up. I wouldn't go as far as to say I was indoctrinated by any means. It was just in the car, it was the Police playing, which is my dad's favorite band. So I know that catalog front to back. My first concert that my parents were adamant about taking me to was Phil Collins. They recognized the budding, at the time, well, I guess I was singing and drumming a little bit at that time. When I was 3 years old, so I go to a Phil Collins concert.
Oh my gosh.
And then a couple weeks later, I go to a Raffi concert. If everybody knows the king of children's music. But I guess there was some my parents were fostering something very early on that they saw. There was nothing forced on me, and especially because besides a general admiration for music, especially on my dad's side, there's really not a whole lot of musicianship within the family. I'm sort of, there's really nothing genetic, I would say, that we can easily trace about me doing music. It's just this natural proclivity and inclination that my parents picked up on when I was late 2, early 3. I got my first drum set when I was 3. And I think I gravitated probably more toward just classic rock at first. And that was evident through my first 2 to 3 projects. And the first project...
Are we still 3? Are you still 3 years old doing your first project? Or are we talking about
the first
rock and roll?
project.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, no, the first professional project would have been a group called Parental Guidance. And that was when I was about, actually, I'm wrong. It was a band called Major Minor. It was formed out of some kids I went to school with at Southern Delaware School of the Arts. And we were a very typical classic rock band. We were playing a lot of 60s and 70s, just kind of between like the more psychedelic Woodstock side, like Jefferson Airplane, but then like a lot of Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, which kind of, you know, segues.
And you were drumming.
And I was only drumming. That was actually a 6-piece act at that time, which eventually became a 4-piece that we called Parental Guidance, and that was kind of my first real extended taste in the professional gigging world.
Right.
And that was very much just classic rock band, and I did that for about 3 to 4 years, kind of 12 through 15. And it was all classic rock, and it was very similar to the set list that you're probably alluding to a little bit, in that there's just a lot of classic rock when you look around this area. And I think that goes for a lot of areas. It's just kind of, I mean, I hate to say it, like, you know, Mustang Sally, Pink Floyd, Comfortably Numb. I mean, it's just Sweet Home Alabama.
Yeah.
We beat these songs to death.
There's gradations for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
But
you know, the reason there's a black hole. That being said, I didn't start Decade80 when I was like 20 and bored. I didn't start it because I noticed the business niche and the black hole that it could fill, although I quickly realized that was the case.
there, yeah.
But
So you chose it mostly because you would enjoy it.
I chose it because I enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean,
And you had already kind of done the classic rock thing.
Oh,
So, right, so that,
done
so
and
this
so
was
done.
Like, check it off, yeah.
It is so checked off.
Yeah.
It's not, it became something I just didn't want to listen to anymore after those first 2 acts. And nothing against those acts, like those were formative experiences, and I love the bonds I've made with the people and the learning experience through that. But the music itself, I don't, flat out, I do not like classic rock. I can honestly tell you, it's just so beat to death, and I'm over it, and it just doesn't, I would never really listen to it by choice at this point.
Do you think that one of the reasons that it is so popular for cover bands is because the 80s stuff is so much harder? You know?
Partially.
I mean, I don't want to...
Partially.
Yeah.
I think there's numerous reasons for it. It almost amazes me more people aren't in the whole 80s scene. I like the fact I haven't seen a whole lot more in the last 3 to 4 years, whether on a local or regional level, I haven't seen either. So there's got to be some reason that maybe I'm not even thinking of why people aren't picking up on the 80s thing. I think that it's probably easiest when you're looking for inspiration to start a band to do what everybody else is doing, because I mean the classic rock model, it works, these people get hired, but it seems extremely saturated to me. I mean, if it didn't work, then you wouldn't see it. So to some extent, I think it's just the safe bet. Just go for the classic rock set. It's
but
inoffensive.
is there a different need for the 80s? I mean, like, I don't know a lot about the actual music, but it's like more synth, and it's like, you know what I mean? Like, and
I'll say this
like
as well.
like fully electric guitar, like, you know, verse. I mean, I know the songs are still like that, but you don't have the riff in every single, you know, 80s song and stuff.
Yeah, so to speak to that point, I thought of something else too, but on that point, yeah, the music is harder to reproduce loyally. It's extremely difficult.
Yeah, that's well put.
And for Decade80, one of the priorities since day one has been to have people come out and say, oh my gosh, that sounds like the original. You guys are doing this like I remember it, and it's bringing back even more memories, I think, as a result of
like
trying to be exactly, because this just sounds like me where I was in 1984 in the summer, right? And that's always been a priority for me, I think, not only because I want people to feel that, but I really have scrupulous standards, and I have a lot of trouble going to see cover bands and original bands who aren't living up to the studio expectation. And it is really hard to do. In the 80s, there was the emergence of a ton of digital we can go into. But the synths, as you said, I mean, synths became sort of big in the late 70s, and then in the early 80s, it was inescapable to the point you had people hired to go to studios just to program synths for a track, numerous people on the same track who weren't even in the band, just to get that production level up. And so the most logical reason why I don't think as many people are doing it is because of how much back end preparation, how much more time it takes to learn every song. I say this to the people who really ask and dive deep into the subject. Preparing every song isn't just Taylor and I, Taylor's my guitar player. It's not just us sitting down and, you know, taking 40 minutes to get the song together. Every song averages about 6 hours before it's stage ready. That is how much studio time that goes into the production of getting these songs stage ready. Unless you're really prepared, you've got all your patches being like the sound, how it gets to the certain synth sound it is. Getting it ready to that point for a loyal reproduction is easily 6 hours per song. Decade80 has 130 songs and counting in the repertoire at this point. And so, you multiply that by 6 hours per song.
I was told there'd be no math, but I think it's over like 700.
You guys can do the
math.
If you're really gonna nerd out with us today. Yeah. I think we did the math one time when we were sitting down. It's something that happens over numerous years. The barriers to entry, much higher with a high production act like this than with classic rock. You get that guitar, you get the riff down, 45 minutes, you got it.
Right. And you can kind of fudge it. I mean, and I'm not, tooling on classic rock cover bands. I was in one, you know what I mean? But there's a little bit more give. You know what I mean? But like a Pat Benatar song has like no give. Like every note has to be right. And I would think a lot of the 80s are like that.
Absolutely. And there's this whole struggle with making sure that you have to be really cohesive with the synth parts and the things that are more programmed, because if you're not, it sounds like you have to be so well coordinated. You have to know the songs front to back and make sure that when there is that riff, that it's 100% perfect, like in a Pat Benatar song, because it is more noticeable to mess up in our context, especially being most of the time there's just two people playing with Decade80. So you're all carrying your weight, multitasking, and so you have to make sure you know these songs like the back of your hand, and that becomes tough when you have a more extensive set list like we do.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, you can't, the guitarist can't go, oops, I need to go around one more time. Right? Like you just literally can't do that,
You can't. You've got one shot.
A lot of bands do that, right? Like, you're looking at each other like, oh, I missed my, as the singer, oh, I missed my in. Hold on,
figure out
another round.
It's
you have no give on that way because of the production.
Because of the production, technically, there are ways, I think, in the future where technology is evolving. You can get past that kind of struggle, but truly, until you have probably even more people behind you, and luckily we do have a team behind us now at Decade80, but really, we're still kind of fighting technology. It's like the biggest benefit and evil at the same time.
Right.
It's pretty stringent. Once you're in a song, you're doing a song, and it's not so flexible. And by the way, that regardless of whether they're doing 80s, super synth, super program stuff, whatever, that's what 99% of big acts are doing too. They're all under the same type of situation where it's kind of one and done. And that's easier to do when you've got the same...
Because of technology?
Because of technology. It's easier, like when you're a touring act and you've got the same 20, 22 songs, or if you're Taylor Swift, 40 songs. If you've got the same 20 songs every night, you should know it front to back. With us, we take a request, right? Pop it in, and we still need to be that cohesive.
Yeah.
So it's just a completely different. We have very high standards. When I say we, I mean it started with me, Mr. Type A. It's a very high standard, and it's a constant battle. But at the same time, I do feel the need to use everything technologically that we have available, reasonably accessible.
Right.
We need to be using it like all the big guys are.
Well, I mean, I have to say that you definitely you keep the integrity of the songs. It was like over a year that I was seeing you guys on Instagram, and would just see, just somebody, from the audience videoing it and stuff. And I could just see the tops of the heads, and the one that was like, oh my God, I have to go see them. It's like quiet, and then you hear Taylor going like, and I like almost got chills, but it was like note for note, like, you know what I mean? Like everything, like, and just like you said, like, oh my gosh, it was like I was watching Top Gun again. You know what I mean? Like, it was like,
that's exactly
visceral.
what we want.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. Yeah, I'm glad you felt that way.
It was, so you're hitting the mark for sure there.
Thank you. That's one of his favorite songs too.
Is
so
it?
he'll love hearing that.
Please let him know.
Yes.
I was like, oh my God, I have to go see this band. They're amazing.
Heck yes, I'm glad you did. You caught us at a really strong show, I think, too.
Yes.
And I have a feeling it won't be the last Decade80 show you'll go to.
You can count on that. That's for sure. Although I will say, you know, I'm Gen X, so I'm a little old, so I go to your like earlier starting shows, you know, like
I get it.
Yeah.
And the good news is we've got plenty of those coming up, believe it or not.
Yeah.
So it's
And
exciting.
you've got a lot of young fans. You know, so
absolutely.
talk to me about that. How the '80s, you know, how your set list, your show has resonated with, you know, people of all generations and particularly yours.
Absolutely. That was the biggest shock for me going into this entire project. I don't like calling it a project, but starting this group, I expected, quite frankly, a Gen X to Boomer audience.
Right.
At that time, I just kind of said Boomer until I realized that Gen X is really
because I talked to you because you were like, oh, I forgot about Gen X. I'm like, yeah, that's the problem. Everybody forgets about Gen X.
Don't take this the wrong way, everybody, but I'm kind of, I think Boomers are like the easy ones to make fun of typically. So that probably speaks well on the whole Gen X thing.
We'll take that.
But when in reality, Boomers are old. Boomers are kind of really old
Not
right
your
now.
parents, but like when you think of boomers, I agree. Like when you think of okay boomer, I think of somebody much older.
Exactly.
You know? Yeah.
Exactly. So I sort of realized that when you look at kind of the year-round core audience that's consistent wherever we are, it's probably concentrated in Gen X. But at the same time, you know, summer 2021, Decade 80 is starting to get really active. We've got
Was that your second season?
Our first season was 2021.
Okay.
Yeah, we did a couple trial shows in late 2020 just as a proof of concept, and it worked. And because of those trial shows, we got booked every Monday at one of our first clients' places called Conch Island in Rehoboth. And he's been a great client ever since. And we started that summer every Monday. We thought Mondays, that's the toughest night in the industry. Right. We thought we'll give this whole thing a shot. The stakes are low. We're a new band. There's not a whole lot to lose right now, only gain. And those were absolutely incredible Mondays. They felt, by the end of the summer, more like Fridays. And that base we were building that whole time in Rehoboth was not just the Gen X. Gen X brought their kids.
Right, I can see it. Just like you were listening to the Police, you know, with your parents.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when I looked into the audience and saw the kids, they knew just as many lyrics as the parents did. And I thought, okay, maybe this whole niche is a little bit more universal demographically than I had originally expected.
Right.
And I mean, there were a lot of things that...
What else surprised you?
Yeah, the second thing that surprised me from the trial shows, we were going into it as if we would be a listening band. Like a band that maybe a little
background kind of music, right?
I don't want to say background because actually, believe it or not, from the start, even the first 2 to 3 shows in 2020, the proof of concept shows, people were actually adamantly listening. Like it wasn't like they were talking over us. They were just kind of like almost confused and bewildered, but like positively about what the heck was going on. Just because at that time it wasn't. Yeah. But we weren't super confident in the whole situation. They were new songs for us, regardless of how many times we heard them on the radio. We were performing them for the first time, and we didn't really trust the whole situation yet, and we didn't know that people would respond in the way they did. So I thought, you know, as I'm preparing for those summer 2021 shows, trying to build up the set list beyond the initial 28 songs we had for those first couple shows, I had a lot of slower music thrown in there, like a little bit more of like the early 80s, the yacht rock, soft rock type thing, as well as some more ballad stuff. And then these Monday nights by 10 o'clock p.m. were cranking and people wanted to dance. And so all of a sudden it was just learning the top 40s dance stuff, the synth stuff, right into it. I learned that very quickly that we were not a listening band. Flat out. I think I could sit and enjoy and listen to a Decade 80, but very quickly we became a party band and a dance band, really from the start.
And I mean, I want to hear more about that, but I feel like a lot of that is due to your showmanship, which is just amazing. I mean, you know, the energy, it's not just the music, it's, you know, and I can't imagine, I didn't see those, you know, proof of concept shows, but I can't imagine you were holding back, you know what I mean? Like you were probably giving your all, and that is, you know, half of what gets everybody hype, really, I think.
I'm completely with you. I'm going to speak really well on Taylor's behalf right now because I think once we were comfortable.
And again, Taylor's your guitarist.
Yeah, Taylor's my guitar
you play
player.
drums
Taylor knocks.
and most vocals.
You got it.
And then Taylor's okay.
And then Taylor's primarily guitar, backing vocal. And when Taylor joined the group in 2021, he brought the classic Taylor Knox energy to the table.
Okay.
And especially once he got up to speed on the song list, which
Felt
continues to
confident.
grow.
Yeah.
I mean, that confidence was probably transferred to me. I have seen more of a confidence boost myself in my performance and musicianship than he has. He just brought it to the table really since day
great.
one. And even if he didn't know the material as well, he was faking it till he made it. Especially from the confidence, which is so transferable to the audience. It gives everyone
Absolutely.
permission to let loose. And you could see a marked difference in my stage presence, especially from show 1, summer 2021, to the end of that residency, in August or September. It was a completely different act from a song list perspective, from an energy and showmanship perspective. It truly evolved as we were kind of perfecting our craft and the concept of what we were even doing.
Right.
We kind of grew into something that we didn't even expect. I think it was something Taylor was always ready for. Something I had exuded in other bands, but I felt a lot of pressure going into this. Not only were there only 2 people, you're carrying a lot of weight, but this was my first time being the lead singer. Singing is new to me. It's something I really...
wouldn't know it.
Thank you. I mean, I've worked a lot on it, and the shows are good practice enough, really, but it's been my primary project and self-growth journey has been in the whole singing thing since the start of the band. And yeah, I mean, as it turns out, it's a lot harder to drum and sing than it is to just drum.
Yeah.
So it was a new thing for me. And there's a lot you learn from a posture perspective, for instance, like keeping your torso still enough and keeping your breathing super consistent despite whatever exertion your limbs are doing. There's just a lot. It's sort of a flow you get into, and just by doing it and getting comfortable with the songs and everything, it all came together. It all came together, and as the audience was ready to dance, so were we, and we just kind of evolved into this show that
dance
Decade80
band,
is.
not a listening.
Exactly.
Yeah, and you're right, it is. It's a show.
Thank you.
It's an event.
That's what we're going for.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well,
And it is that way a
part.
lot because of the audience. I have to say, like, I don't do it for me. I don't. Full disclosure, I haven't practiced the drums once since Decade80 started. So it's like, I don't just sit there and just have fun drumming. For me, it's completely about audience reception and feedback. And so we're into it because they're into it. Bottom line, it's cheesy to say, but it is so true. That's how you get that high, is when everybody is into it. It doesn't matter that you only got 3 hours of sleep the night before. You're 100% on in that moment if they are.
Yeah, so talk about what you got upcoming, events-wise.
By the time this gets released, odds are our entire summer schedule is going to be released through September. And at Decade80.com. It's so simple. I think if you want to find us on all your social media platforms, in addition to our upcoming shows page, just start at Decade80.com. It's a sure thing. You'll find all our links and handles there. You can
where your merch will be soon.
Oh, and that perhaps even by the time this is released, stay tuned for a merch store online as well, in addition to at shows. And if you visit that website, you're going to see some really interesting dates. We've got some new venues coming up, which you may need to just check out the website to see that. But a few things I do want to mention right now. We've got a couple amazing shows coming up right here locally. The first thing I think of, Friday, June 7th, we're going to be doing the BB Bash, which is the biggest fundraiser of the year for the BB Foundation. Absolutely amazing medical group who's doing great things through the foundation, with the foundation, and we're so happy to be helping host an 80s themed BB Bash for this year. Go grab your tickets. We're coming up on that event, and it probably is going to sell out. So I want to make sure that you're able to get those tickets. That's for June 7th. And
I mean, that's always big, and the fact that you guys are headlining, I think it's go get them. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I hope so. Seriously. And then another ticketed show I can think of, Friday, June 28th. I'm surprised we haven't done this kind of event before. We're hosting a Decades dance party, is actually what the show is called. But we're going to be hosting a few different bands, including Decade80. Okay, we're going to be covering one band with the 70s. One band with the 80s, who's that?
Would that be?
And then another band with the 90s/2000s. We're going to kind of be celebrating everything. How sacrilegious. We're going to be hosting that event at a brand new venue, Eagles Crest at Hudson Fields. The Hudson Fields,
God,
you know,
that's
in
gonna
Milton.
be so fun.
It's going to be super fun.
It's such a great venue. And
it's going to be an amazing venue.
That'll be really fun.
Huge stage,
Huge
massive
stage.
PA, and lots of room to spread out, which is something that's becoming increasingly hard to come by at Decade 80 shows. And so if you want to just dance the night away in your own 100 square feet of space, I mean, like, quite literally, this is an opportunity unlike any other in a capacity that we've never done before.
Yeah.
You're going to want to visit decade80.com to find the link to those tickets, because it is a ticketed event, and boy, you're going to get your money's worth, because I know that roster. It's a great lineup of entertainment that night.
Oh, I'm excited for that. Friday, June 28th.
June 28th.
Okay.
You've got to visit the site for that. And then something you may have heard about before, kind of a big deal. Decade 80 goes international this year for the first time as part of Way Down Here Music Fest.
For the first time. Let's
first
just
time.
stress that.
Oh yeah, a little asterisk.
They're coming, yeah.
Yeah, that's going to be in the beautiful Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, and it's such a cool opportunity because this is a music festival that's unlike any other. Not only is it in a stunning vacation destination, but also we've got an amazing lineup of artists who are able to get up close and personal with fans. We go as far as to say this is a fan experience festival. So you're not just watching Decade 80, you're partying with Decade 80. You're hanging, you're drinking, you're engaging in complete debauchery with Decade 80 like we've not been able to engage with Headband Nation and the like ever before. And so, you know,
Puerto Vallarta, did you say?
Puerto Vallarta, Mexico,
Okay.
the stunning West Coast.
Is there a name to the festival?
Way Down Here. The festival's
Did they
called
do
Way
it
Down Here
last
Fest.
fall?
They did actually.
Okay.
This festival's a few years in the making, and it just continues to grow.
Yes.
And we were so excited to
They
be
always
asked.
have amazing acts.
Oh, they
and
do.
So I'm not surprised
They do. Oh yeah, I mean, headlining is Nate Smith, who just spent so many weeks #1 on the country airplay charts. I mean, he actually still has a show locally here at Bottle and Cork that of course sold out immediately, right? And luckily this festival isn't sold out yet. You got numerous opportunities to see him and yours truly, and you just have to
What
visit.
were the dates on that again?
That's going to be October 5th through 10th of this year, so still a little bit of time, but tickets are selling. We get reports on that, and so you probably do want to jump on that sooner than later. You don't have to remember anything but decade80.com for all of this. And of course, I'd be remiss to exclude the NALU residency. This is the first time that I've actually talked about this publicly, and it's on the website now as well. This is the summer that we're doing a residency at NALU called Dewey Beach Life. That's the name of the residency, and it's kind of to pay homage to this area that's been really so fruitful for us. It's so beautiful to party in and to grow up in, and that we have really evolved around.
Special place,
Very, very special place, and a really special venue, and a place to connect with Decade 80 in a more intimate setting, I think, than you're actually able to do at any other venue. It's honestly, there's just different sets. It's more changing dynamic sets, more crowd engagement. I mean,
and
NALU
is that
interesting.
Weekly?
That is
Monthly?
weekly. So starting Memorial Day weekend through actually September 14th, that's the last Saturday. It's every single Saturday at NALU Dewey Beach. I gotta mention that. And if you haven't seen us at NALU yet, we've got many of
NALU Dewey.
NALU Dewey.
Right,
Yeah, right in Dewey. It's absolutely a show. There's a reason we do it every week. And it's not just because the crowd evolves in Dewey. We've got a lot of fans that only know us because of that show specifically, and for good reason. I think it's a really strong and unique representation of kind of the best of what Decade 80 is. We're able to really achieve at that show.
That's cool.
So please come on out, and I know there's a lot to remember there. What am I going to say? Decade80.com. That's it. Yeah.